Mayra, yes, I understand that you have a mother who is not the same as mine. Nicolau said convincingly. That is, if we are not victims of yet another hoax that is plaguing our mother Russia. Hey! Exclaimed the stepmother. What do you think of all this, Katienka, you who have known us since our birth? Because, according to what you told us, you knew our mother, didn't you? Asked Mayra, intrigued and willing not to believe in the phalanx of those spirits, although she could not deny herself what everyone had seen and heard. It was as clear and evident as daylight. It's true, Mayra, but I know little about her. When I went to help her, she was already about to give birth. Question, and then pass away. I never thought such a tragedy would happen to poor Yulian. I was so sad that I never had the courage to leave them. You and Christian seem to be the same age. The neighbors were always teasing your father about this, saying he never gave him a break. To his wife Anna, Katienka remembered the joking chatter of the villagers. Nicholas, too, seemed to remember something about births, the unexpected arrival of a baby, and soon after of another that appeared in the scene of her house, causing a lot of confusion among her parents. But I was too young to understand the critical situation parents face with their children. Younger, a vague memory made him remember, but he couldn't put the facts together and ended up giving up. Mayra was in the cart, sitting between the two of them. She felt cold and tried to snuggle closer to him. Brother, who gently pushed her to Katienka's side. It was impossible not to be together with the rocking of the cart. Nervously, he asked Katienka to stand in the middle, muttering that his sister was getting in the way. Are you mad at me, Nicolau, because I stopped you from talking to my mother? He joked. She wanted to take revenge. You mean your mother? My mother wasn't at that session, he replied instinctively. Nicholas, who had not felt his mother's spirit, they're about to start. Katienka scolded one after the other. If they don't agree, why do they still insist on? Go out together? It wasn't our mother who was there. Nokolo, you don't see what I see. It was a ghost of the harvest. Mayra explained, telling her secret. It was she who was talking to me. What are you saying? Nicolau was startled by the explanation. You mean to say that the ghosts were present at the session? Yes, I saw it. It was Mrs. Norobod's daughter, and I'm thinking of telling her what happened. You can count on it. Even though she's sick, maybe she wants to talk to the daughter she loves so much, said Nokolo, thinking of comforting Mrs. Norobod, who was so good to them, and of the possibility of continue to observe those phenomena that attracted him. I can bring them in one of the carriages, are bigger and more comfortable. The cart was slow, tiring, and very uncomfortable for such a long journey. So, a small group entered the Norobod territory and was awaited by their father, who, worried, instantly he looked at the horizon. 60 Spiritism in Russia. New concern darkened Yulian Sumarokov's brow when his daughter innocently told him what had happened at the widow Majika's session. No, he said nervously. Mayra, I forbid you from going to such places where only weapons are armed. Confusion. Don't mention this to Mrs. Norobod, who is not in good health. He frightened her energetically, trying to keep her away from those compromising communications. Why don't you want it, Dad, if this will only do her good? I'm sure the old lady needs these. Encouragement to continue living. Let Mayra speak to you. After all, it's your daughter's spirit. Nicolau defended her, not noticing anything wrong with his sister's attitude and interested in returning. But by carriage. If Mayra doesn't tell, I will, because I intend to invite her to go with us to the house of the widow. Sumarokov, with a sour face, without arguments, fell silent, lit a cigar, sitting in an old armchair covered with a quilt. The next day, Mayra went to the mansion to talk to her old friend. Her happiness at seeing the girl who, every day, looked more like her late Sasha. Mayra narrated the singular appearance of the ghost at the moment when the medium received the spirit of his mother in his inexperience. He imagined that both spirits were present, while the only spirit that manifested itself was that of Sasha, his blood mother. Those facts, as Nicolau had foreseen, motivated Mrs. Norobod to also take an interest in Majika's sessions, and, as the boy had predicted, she was very curious, and they agreed to go next week to Majika's house. Mrs. Norobod, determined, ordered the priest to come. She wanted his opinion, considering him the person wisest in the place. It was clear he wouldn't like it, but she insisted anyway. Although the Pope did not agree with the new facts, he could do nothing to prevent them. But in his sermons, he never tired of speaking against them. The devil and falsehood go hand in hand in the homes of haggling and wicked widows who exploit the credulity of others, and made the sign of the cross, blessing himself and exorcising himself. However, Spiritism was gaining some adherents in Holy Russia, and he could not bear to think that Mrs. Norobod, his source of income, could leave her domains. No one could dissuade Mrs. Norobod, who, even sick, he went to the house of the widow Majika. The rich carriage stopped in front of the house, attracting everyone's attention. The important lady got out, with difficulty, observed by everyone who wanted to see who was arriving in that vehicle. His presence increased the importance of the small movement in the house of the widow Majika, who was the target of malicious criticism. Those sessions gained credibility, especially when a big shot at the place participated in them. Majika happily received the visit of such an illustrious lady. They placed her on a comfortable satin sofa, surrounded by soft pillows, as if she were a legendary figure, and no one dared approach, looking at her with respect from afar. Mayra was recognized as soon as she walked in. She had already won over some fans since the first meeting. And now, with the rich lady, her popularity increased, as they believed she was part of the Norobod family. She and Nicholas, dressed simply as peasant children, were standing together. To the woman, they made a beautiful couple, and whispers said they were lovers, because in physical appearance, they had no features in common. In an atmosphere of observation, those present examined each other, closed in a room and silent. Only their eyes danced in their sockets as they waited for the session to begin. Lasted about half an hour. The fat widow Majika, more cheerful than usual, moved gracefully from one side to the other, greeting everyone. She felt very honored by the important visit, and he took great care to make the session lively, as if it were a theater to attract attention. For your gifts, some people prayed fervently, but the majority, full of curiosity, saw in it just an interesting pastime, without focusing on the great importance of the subject. This season recorded facts relating to the greatest achievement of humankind, the right to talk to one's dead and learn their lessons. The session soon began with the manifestation of an entity crying, then another character from beyond came nervously, claiming his fortune. Taking advantage of the noise made by the mediums, the whispers increased, and when the medium fell silent, they ceased together. In the darkness, the faces of the two mediums could be seen, transforming with each spirit they approached. Gay passivity. The spirits did not want to know about Majika's alphabet, which, seated, had the air of the one who presided over the session, but the spirits sought other mediums, whose humility and spirit of giving favored their communication. Their ease and their recollection offered them the opportunity to improve themselves, letting them speak, while more enlightened indoctrinator talked to them, calming them down. The indoctrinating medium was a short, middle-aged man. Thin, his hair, matted with oil, shone, his eyes were lively and quick, and his cheerful countenance inspired confidence. He had a humble, generous, and attractive manner. The room was full and very lively. A clear, strong voice caught everyone's attention. An entity wishes to speak with Mrs. Norobod, but will not do so today, asking her to come. Next week, the medium paused and then continued. Wait, there is another piece of information. The young man who is at your side cannot be missed. You must make an effort to be here, because important revelations will be made. The small group left, encouraged to participate more often, and Mrs. Norobod did not speak of. Another thing, on the farm, Spiritism was the talk of the town, and the small group eagerly awaited the day of the meeting. Kreshchen and Katienka also wanted to accompany them. Sumarokov did everything to prevent them from going. Those spirits, if they let the cat out of the bag, would constitute a threat for his peace. Just now that Kostya had moved out his way, these new things appeared. Concerns. In the morning, the small caravan left, carrying Mrs. Norobod, who, very willing, had regained joy. Before they left, Professor Semyon approached them. "What time will the meeting start?" "At 3 o'clock. "Shall we go?" invited Nicholas, who was driving the carriage. "Don't waste time with me. I'll go later," said Semyon, who intended to go on horseback and only come back. The next day, Nicolau, interested in attending the meetings with the purpose of setting up his own business on the farm, group, with Mrs. Norobod's permission, observed everything attentively to learn and acquire the necessary domain. Professor Semyon, who had attended some meetings in more advanced centers, advanced, such as Saint Petersburg, where studious and thoughtful mediums worked, found a certain resistance regarding that group. Mrs. Majika did not inspire confidence in him. It was the only group in that place, and was not a good model to be imitated. The people in the room were impatient for the meeting to begin. Unfortunately, one incident with the widow Majika canceled the expected meeting. "What? There won't be a meeting?" Mrs. Norobod asked nervously to the shy man who had gone out to warn them. "No, she is not well and apologizes," replied the informant, embarrassed by the importance of women. "I can't believe we travel for hours for nothing to happen." He didn't want to accept it. "Calm down," Mayra said calmly. "Maybe it would be better if we postponed it. The spirits must have an intelligent reason that, at the moment, is beyond our reach. Let's go back." Nicolau also intervened. "Furthermore, Mrs. Norobod, such communications worry me, because she receives few. Spirits in their alphabet remain untouchable. They do not show you what to do." Nicolau is right. We didn't see the widow Majika receive even a spirit from the beyond. Complained Kadienka. Nicolau called Mayra. "The spirits can communicate anywhere and through anyone, right? You were explaining it very well on the way. Are you thinking the same thing as me?" Christian joked with his sister. "Yes, Christian. I bet we're thinking the same thing. You can confirm it." He encouraged him. Mayra, "So, why don't we do our own session?" "That's exactly what I was thinking, Christian," replied Mayra, who had guessed. "Your thought." Nicolau, determined to create the session in his own home, began to study the best way to act, counting on the experience of Majika's sessions and the guidance of Professor Semyon. They returned discouraged from the house of the widow Majika, who did not even bother to show up to justify their absence. On the way, they met Professor Semyon, who, upon learning of the fact, returned with them, mounted on his horse. That episode, however, served to take other measures, and under Semyon's guidance, a small experimental spiritism group was born on the Norobod farm. The new era that would mark the exchange between the two worlds began, allowing the so-called the dead communicate with the living, in sessions specifically organized for this purpose. The priest's exorcism and his warning to Mrs. Norobod were of no use, who, with or without her authorization, required that the sessions be held in his mansion and not in the enclosure's izba. The meetings were of a very strange nature, and some felt that Mrs. Norobod was not very well the mental faculties, and her stubbornness only served to attract the spirit of her own daughter who once frightened the peasants. The priest rejoiced in this situation, declaring that were possessed by the devil. Mrs. Norobod did indeed attract the spirit of her husband, a spirit that had never left there. Her approach caused him enormous imbalance, because his spirit, troubled by heinous crimes, he looked to his wife for an escape valve to feel relieved, and she, totally dominated by him, ended up rolling on the floor, as he did in life. Not even everyone's prayers could keep him away, and the woman's condition only got worse. No matter how much Professor Semyon tried to explain to the students and their parents, he couldn't finish. With ancient superstition and fear, it was rumored that the owner of the castle was in cahoots with that demon. and their meetings did not have a desired end nor the spirit of Norobod. Relieved. It was a real disaster, and everyone was exhausted, dealing with spiritual forces that they could not, were able to dominate due to their inexperience and lack of faith. Semlin asked them to calm down. The sessions, which had recently begun, were interrupted by Alex Norobod, who feared the frightened moujiks would flee and abandon their lands. His mother and the others should put an end to that madness. Since the oldest was Semyon, he would be responsible if something more serious happened to his mother or harmed the upcoming harvest. It all ended when Semyon left. 61 Nicolau and Mayra, precursors. However, at the Sumarokov's house, everything changed and Nicholas secretly formed a small group to study serious pamphlets that arrived from the capital for Professor Semyon and that now belonged to him. In the little izba, in the evenings, he, Katienka, and the brothers and tried to do the same, according to the instructions that were written, while Sumarokov. In a corner he watched them, smoking his cigar. They tried hard and achieved little. No spirit communicated with them. They seemed isolated from the spirit world. This is to help us understand that these things do not happen according to our will, but according to theirs, said Pavel. What are we missing, then, for them to come? Christian asked, annoyed. I think our concentration is weak, and that the spirits expect us to be better. Concentrated. Mayra argued. You who saw the spirits, now you don't see them? Christian asked his sister, jokingly. I see them. Who said I don't see them? Replied the surprised girl, thinking that everyone saw them. So, why don't you tell us what you see? He asked. Pavel. Because no one asked me, Mayra said, embarrassed. For her, seeing the spirits was something natural. Tell us, Mayra, what you see, said Nicolau, turning to her, who, sitting beside him, did not seem very willing to narrate the invisible world. I see beings, unknown to me, but they are very friendly and look at us smiling. Their robes are white and some shine brighter than others. Mayra was describing the entities that were there participating in the meeting, to the astonishment of everyone, who perceived in their words a most sublime truth. They were not alone. The spirits were with them. The seriousness and desire of the small group had attracted their protectors, and in the humble cradle in which they were born, the timid exchange began, with the beyond having as main protagonist Mayra and her faculties. Mrs. Norobod was getting worse. She suffered from osteoporosis. With great effort she managed to get up. Walk. He limped, leaning on the rich cane Alex had brought from Saint Petersburg. The disease worsened, and she could no longer go down the stairs or visit the izba in the enclosure. She requested the presence. Mayra constantly asked her to read a story to distract her, and she always complained. I'm reaching the end, my dear Mayra. I feel like I won't reach spring. I ask you that you come to see me every day. Your presence makes my life happy and gives me the courage to endure my pains. Don't say that, madam. You will still see many springs. You will see the flowers and hear the song of the birds. Birds, said the girl, encouraging her with her tenderness. Tomorrow I will tell you a beautiful story about spirits who have just arrived from Paris. Until Mrs. Norobod fell asleep, Mayra didn't come home. Lately, Mrs. Norobod would ask her during the day and sometimes at night. Mayra sensed that her end was nearby, and did everything to cheer her up. The girl would arrive in the morning and only return in the afternoon. Then Mrs. Norobod began asking him to stay at night as well, until finally a bed next to Mrs. Norobod's bed for her, who began to live in the mansion. That's why the sessions were dwindling. They were held once in a while, hoping that she had a break, as he was the only person, they thought, who attracted the spirits. One day, a rich carriage arrived at the farm. It was Kostia, who, longing, came to meet the friends, his daughter, and that place, the stage of his memories. The visitor was greeted with great joy by Alex. He came laden with rich gifts and news of the capital. Soon everyone learned of his arrival, and Sumarokov's soul was again filled with grave worries, because her daughter was practically living in the mansion and would be at the mercy of Kostya. She was afraid he would court her again. She wasn't so sure it was he who had found the note. He would never have had the courage to ask her, and the doubt caused him great restlessness. Kostya felt sorry when he learned that the girl was sleeping next to Mrs. Norobod, and it was she who served as his nurse in his nights of suffering, imagining his effort, engaged in daily cleaning. He found her thinner and paler, but her beauty remained stunning. It was hard not to stare at that young woman who, without a doubt, was his daughter. Could it be? Who didn't notice her resemblance to Sasha? For now, as a father, there was nothing he could do to reduce her work, and watched her with pity for her fate, serving as a maid for her own grandmother, while Sonia enjoyed all the perks of her position, insisting on humiliating her with some services that she maliciously imposed on the girl. Mayra received rich gifts from him, and very apprehensive, did not know whether to accept or not, ending up receive them so that he would not think her ungrateful. She had a delicate demeanor, doing her job with great grace. She acted as if she had received a fine education. If it weren't for her modesty and spirit of service, anyone would take her for a rich young woman, educated for great salons. Having ruled out the possibility of marriage, they acted naturally, but with a certain reserve, despite of the great sympathy that identified them. They barely greeted each other. Kostya had come to stay for 2 days and ended up staying longer. Such was the joy of her presence in the house. Cause him. True happiness lit up his face. There was an atmosphere of great peace there. In several moments, he had the urge to caress her, but the fear of being misinterpreted made him remain reserved. Sometimes he held back the urge to hold her in his arms and call her daughter. Sumrokov made excuses to come and go, curious to know what was happening in the large residence, when he wasn't asking Katienka to spy. "Stop being jealous, man," Katienka said, smiling. "This fellow doesn't want anything to do with you anymore. Your daughter. I have never seen anyone treat another person with such politeness. You don't need to worry. Yulian, nothing will happen to Mayra." "Why, then, does he take so long?" "Don't ask me that. I know nothing." Yulian Sumarokov was mumbling in the corners without understanding what was happening to him. Comrade Kostya and what his intentions would be, much less the reason for his delay at the farm. Sasha, Alex's daughter, was always on Nikolao's tail, and he tried not to disappoint her. But he didn't. Encouraged. In fact, she wasn't the only one who was interested in him. The other girls always looked differently. Nikolao was also curious to know if the sister was talking to Kosla, and began to pay more attention to Sasha, knowing that she would easily take him to the mansion without causing any problems. Sasha, excited by the spontaneous approach, didn't realize she was being used. She did everything to keep him in her company, thinking he was interested in her. The 2 young men were sitting on the porch, examining a game she had received, and they needed to find 2 more partners. The capricious girl ran to invite Kosla and Mayra to play 62 the game of souls. Mrs. Norobod had fallen asleep, and Sasha found Mayra available. She could rest a bit. Little while Mrs. Norobod slept, but seeing her brother, she happily accepted the invitation. The 4 partners settled down comfortably in the playroom and began a game that looked more like a game of truth. Between questions and answers, the game had as its main objective, aimed to make people know each other better. Kostya and Mayra sat down opposite Nikolao and Sasha, and after dealing the cards to the questions, the game began. It was called the game of the soul, in which each person would discover his own soul and that of the partner with whom he most identified. Moments later, when they finished the game, they had the great surprise of realizing that the brothers' tastes were similar, and they hadn't lost a single point. Sasha, jealous of that situation, in which she and Nikolao had nothing in common, said, "Good thing she's your sister. It's not fair. Siblings live together, and they really look alike." "Not always," Kostya replied significantly.